Yeah, do it. Really.
Welcomes.
All right. I'm going to go ahead and officially call to order this meeting of the Community Advisory Committee for January. I am Aubrey Day, newly appointed first vice chair, and serving today, sitting in for Tim as chair for today's meeting. Tim unfortunately had a family emergency and isn't able to join us. So since we have several new faces in the room and since it's standard practice to do introductions, let's go around the room and introduce ourselves. Jim?
Jim Moore, at large.
Roy Rosenthal, Manitou Springs.
Shelley Roars, League of Women Voters.
Bill Bowles, Park County.
Sharon Brown, City of Fountain.
Andrew Rediger, at large.
Ed Dills, representing REMA.
Terry Hayes, Town of Monument.
Patty Venture, representing City of Colorado Springs.
Orrin Childers, Citizen at Large.
Donna Wood, NEPCO.
And Jessica McMullen with PPACG.
So we will have time for citizen comment for anything that's not on the agenda at the beginning. And if you do have comments related to, what's that? Yes. First, unless anybody wants to pull anything off of the consent list, we'll go ahead and, do we take approval for that?
I move we approve the consent agenda.
Okay,
Second.
great. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Great. Jim?
Just a quick comment. I haven't commented on this in the past, but on the revenue and expense statement and the declaration of the budget, we are seeing a comparison to the annual budget and not the budget to date for the time that the revenue and expenses were incurred. So it's a little hard to translate. We're 32% behind on federal state grants with 1 month left to go in the year. If in fact that's true, that doesn't look like we're going to recover all of that stuff in 1 month. So I think it would help if we saw this end of November would show the end of November budget numbers. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. What you guys see is exactly what the Board of Directors sees.
Well,
This is the same information that is included in their packets.
what can I say?
Good question.
Thanks, Jim. Okay, so public comments. We will have time for public comments for anything that's not on the agenda here at the beginning. If you have comments about anything on the agenda, there will be time during those agenda items to comment. We're going to first quickly take a...
We're going to have Julie come up first, and then we're going to do a...
Okay. Public comments. Come on up.
Times. All right, just like old times. I'm Julie Ott, for those of you who I don't know. I am a member of the League of Women Voters, and until November was a member of this committee. And I wasn't able to attend in December to acknowledge that the League of Women Voters was having a new representative come on, and of course she's here. It's Shelley Roars. So, Shelley, I'm glad you're on the committee. And I also wanted to acknowledge the work of the committee and how much I've enjoyed working here with all of you for the last 3 years, and some of you not for quite that long because you're newer. But anyway, thank you for the opportunity, and I would say keep up the good work. Thanks.
Any other public comment? Okay, picture time.
So if everyone will please come.
Okay, so our first action item, tip amendment number 12. We're expecting Catherine, but I'm seeing John.
Catherine sends her regrets. So I'll be pitch hitting here. I wasn't going to do it, but then they said there'd be snacks, so I was like, sure. So the item in front of you today is tip amendment number 12. Actually, before I get into it real quickly, I did want to acknowledge Mark Northrup. He's our newest employee at PPACG in the Transportation Division, so you might see him up here occasionally with different items. He comes to us from the Great White North, Dr. Cog. So tip amendment number 12. We have the items in your packet. Let me kind of hit each one of these. The first one is to add funds that had been returned to the program, about a little under $2 million, to the 30th Street roadway and safety improvements. We did have, do you mind hitting the PowerPoint icon real quick? Right next to it. There we go. We did have a request as to where exactly this particular project is. I didn't prepare sort of a location slide for everyone. But again, as individual members, as you receive the agenda and you're reading through it, and you say, hey, I've got a question of that, sometimes if you let us know what those questions are in advance, we can prepare extra material. So there was a question exactly where this project was located. It is 30th Street, and it's 2 miles in length from Fontanero to Mesa. So all of the jurisdictions, when they put together their requests for projects, we have them put together an application. So all I did was grab their application, grab the maps off of that application, and made a quick slide. So took me all of like 5 minutes. So if these are the sorts of things, additional information you guys want to have in advance, we're happy to do it. So again, it's basically 30th Street there. You can see this next to Garden of the Gods, from Fontanero up to Mesa Road. Or actually, I kind of flipped them, didn't I? But that's the location of that project. And moving on, do you have something on this particular one? Yes, sir.
Yes.
Madam Chair, if that's all right. Yeah.
I'm a little slow with math. So it looks like the project is short, before we do any decisions today about the additional money, $4.3 million.
So the $4.3 million is made up with Colorado Springs funds, so it is fully funded.
Right. But I'm working off of Tim Roberts' memo, and the two numbers with additional federal dollars of 1.9 and additional local match of 1.3 still comes up short just over $1 million.
Right. So they're according to Tim, and I had lunch with him today, he was telling me that this project is fully funded and that it's Colorado Springs overmatch. So the funds are available and the money is there.
His note doesn't make that clear.
Okay.
Because unless $500,000 from the deletion of the intersection traffic signal is happening both there and in the federal funds, I can't account. There's $500,000 I can't account for.
Right, and like I said, according to Tim, that.
So he's going to write a personal check.
Well, yeah,
Okay,
I think it's Colorado Springs funds. But.
That sounds good. Thank you.
All right. The next item is we've got basically 4 projects in a row that are being canceled. We've got the Manitou Springs Canyon Avenue Bridge. So that project, they have some new staff come in, so they reevaluated that project and determined that these improvements were not needed. And as such, because they're PPACG regional funds, whenever a project gets canceled, they come back to the regional pot to be redistributed. We have the Mountain Metro Route 9 project. That was returned because it was completed using other funds. We have the Monument Beacon sidewalks for about $40,000 because it's not able to meet the obligation deadlines that are required with federal dollars. And the Lincoln sidewalks, $338,205. And again, that's not being able to meet the obligation deadlines. So this is sort of the $1.9 million that we move to the first item came from the cancellation of these items. So if there's no questions on those, I'll move on. Colorado Springs Mountain Metro Transit received grant funding for 2 battery electric buses. And so again, by federal rules, if you're receiving federal dollars for something, it's got to be into, it has to be identified in the tip. So that's that addition. The next item down is adjustment of the scope for Manitou Springs Creek Walk phases 3 and 4. At this point, they're putting phase 4 off to the side, and they're using those funds to just do phase 3. And again, this is sort of just making sure they keep focus and deliver what they can. And then finally, we've got the addition of funds for the I-25 and Powers interchange. And this is a developer-funded project through Copper Ridge, and it's going from $52 million to $67 million. Mr. Mitros is here with Copper Ridge to answer any questions that you might have on this particular project. But that is the different items within this amendment. So if there are questions, yes, sir.
Just a suggestion. I don't know if we've got the schematic, but for newer members of the CAC, if they could see what is contemplated by the Copper Ridge project and how it works through to 2022, I think that would be very helpful. If not today, next month.
Yeah, I don't. Do you happen to bring something we can hold up? Otherwise, we.
Actually, you can go to our website. It's i25powers.com, and there's a nice fly-through video. It'll show you exactly what we're doing.
There you go. 5 powers.
And there should be a link to a fly-through video.
Is that the link right?
No.
Wildcat Construction? No.
Under galleries.
There we go.
So this is a video that our consulting firm, FHU, did for the project.
I'm glad you were here. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
This microphone right there so I can hear you.
Yeah. So I'm Tim Mitros, and I manage the Copper Ridge Metro District. So this is a nice video that is showing the project. Basically, everything is going under I-25 because of the environmental assessment that was done. The Air Force Academy, basically, that was their requirement. Everything goes under so we don't have any overpasses. So everything is going below grade. We're removing probably about 2 million yards of dirt. So you can see this is the existing right there, Northgate Boulevard, where the roundabouts are. This is where the new visitor center is going to be going for the Air Force Academy. And now we're going to be looking south. Again, we're at Northgate. The 2 roundabouts are existing. We're tying in at the roundabouts. And this is where Bass Pro is, CB Potts. And as you can see, everything is going underneath the existing interstate. So we have removed probably 200,000 yards of dirt today. We've got the detours in place. We're getting ready to start construction on the new bridges. Those will be going on in the next few weeks. We'll be putting in the walls so that we can actually start putting the bridges in place.
What's going to be the I-25 traffic when you're actually installing those bridges? Are you going to do like CDOT's doing and close everything down overnight?
We actually have the detour in place. If you drive north today, we've detoured traffic into the center of the road.
Okay.
And so that's going to be in place for probably the next 6 months as we get those bridges built. And we'll also do the same thing for the southbound once we get the northbound going. And we'll detour traffic to the inside to get those bridges in place.
Any other questions for Mr. Mitros?
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank
You're
you.
very welcome.
Thank you. Appreciate you being here.
Any questions or comments regarding the TIP amendment as a whole?
Moving forward up to the recommendation for approval by the board.
Anybody want a second? Did you get those, Jim and Sharon? Okay, good. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Great. Take one more citizen comment. I don't know if there's any.
So Jessica McMullen, your Policy and Communications Manager. As you saw in your board packets, you did get the legislative session update from our meeting on January the 13th. The Legislative Committee is currently meeting every other week, which means we did meet this Monday on January the 27th. So there is actually new bills beyond these. The Legislative Committee, in coordination with our lobbyist and with me and other staff members, looks for bills that we believe will impact PPACG programs or members. These bills are then reviewed by the committee to determine whether we should take a position of support, monitor, oppose, or whether it goes back off our list as something that doesn't necessarily relate to what we've done. Your initial update from me had the bill, Senate Bill 2044, which was a sales and use tax revenue for transportation. This bill is hoping to use sales and use tax to fund transportation needs. Senate Bill 2049 is a senior property tax exemption for medical necessity. This bill is designed to allow seniors who already have the homestead property tax exemption to be able to move that with them if they have to move for a medical reason.
I have a question. So it's only for medical?
That is the one that they are currently proposing. The Senate Bill 2069 is a disabled veterans free state park access. Again, this is one that there are similar things already in place, but we support it. There is House Bill 201042. So this bill is specifically addressing a bill that was passed last year to determine the timeline. There was a bill that passed that said everything would begin last July. They're adjusting that to actually be accurate to next because it was not anticipated. It was a typo in the bill. And Senate Bill 22 was to increase medical providers for senior citizens. At the time that you saw this, it was a monitor. This bill is now one that that the Legislative Committee is proposing be supported based on its benefit for rural communities. It's a tax credit for folks studying geriatric care who are going to serve in rural communities. So, some neat things. And then bills that are new, House Bill 1119 is the state government regulation of PFAS, PFOA substances. You'll notice that I'm not trying to say that out. Not gonna. This bill is sponsored by several of our local legislators. Tony Exum, Lois Landgraf, Dennis Heisey, and Pete Lee are all on it. This bill is one that that the Legislative Committee is monitoring but hoping to amend. It currently has some aspects of the bill that may be overreaches of what can actually be practically done by communities in science at the moment. House Bill 201139 is a peer support professionals behavioral health. This bill we are supporting, but monitoring for additional information. It's designed to encourage folks who have had mental health issues or training to go back for additional education in those things to continue to increase the amount of support available for folks facing those needs. House Bill 201151 expands authority for regional transportation improvements. This bill is one that we're monitoring. Senate Bill 2022 increased the medical providers for senior citizens. Like I mentioned, that's one that we supported. We are monitoring it for a fiscal note just to see if that gets too high. Senate Bill 2065 is to limit mobile electronic devices while driving. You've all seen similar bills. This one is really trying to come down on people using their cell phones while driving. PPACG is, the legislative committee is suggesting support of that bill. You'll notice some of these I'm saying we've taken a position. The bills that were reviewed on January 10th, we've taken the position the PPACG Board of Directors has already passed certification on it. The bills that are from this week, from the 27th, you'll say the legislative committee is suggesting approval because I won't know until Friday at 5 p.m. if there are any non-unanimous decisions, which will change the suggestions of the legislative committee. They do require that all bills that we take a position on, that position be unanimous among all members of PPACG. So when you hear me mumble, that's where I'm coming from. Senate Bill 2091 is a minimum pay for state military forces. Sharon's given me the face. Right now, when state forces such as our National Guard are called up to duty, their minimum pay is $20 a day. So they are encouraging moving that up to, I want to believe that the bill, without looking at it, I believe it was $88 per day. So we are supporting that one. And then
I have a question. How does that, okay, if they're called up, then are they still paid?
Microphone.
Are they still paid by their former employer?
Nope.
So the only thing they get is $20 a day?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. It looks like to me 88 is a little low, but
I think they're
Still under minimum wage.
still well under minimum wage. $7.14 an hour is what it breaks down to.
when they pull up the National Guard.
Yeah.
Okay.
My question is, do they get military benefits?
I don't know the answer to that. This bill is specifically just about
Their daily pay?
what their
Okay.
pay is allowed to be in a day.
Yeah. This is if they're paid, they're called up by the state, not if they're activated in the military.
Correct. Military gives you, the feds give you a completely different than the state does.
Just to point out, and we talked about this earlier, that one went to one of my favorite committees, the State Veterans and Military Affairs Committee, which those who've been around for a while know is the Kill the Bill Committee.
So there are a lot of bills that are proposed, and that one may not actually be. The State Veterans and Military Affairs Committee is colloquially known as the Kill Committee. If it is a bill that you're not quite sure why it went there, it likely went there for an analysis of a round file. Bills like this one, the minimum pay for state forces, it actually makes sense. This bill is actually under consideration. We're not seeing it in the light of that committee because Veterans and Military Affairs. Another bill is Senate Bill 2094 to a plug-in electric motor vehicle registration fee. This is actually one you have heard some ideas about from PPACG in November and December, where our chairman, Norm Steen, was talking about how we can help engage in electric vehicles paying in a similar way as gas vehicles do to be supporting our road and transportation system. This bill is one that we are supporting. Right now, the bill wants to give the funding to the Highway Performance Transportation Enterprise. And our legislative committee and Senator Priola has already said he's comfortable with this, moving it to the Highway User Tax Fund. Highway User Tax Fund is the one that goes immediately to your local governments. High Performance is a little different. There was one update from our initial review on 113. There was a bill, House Bill 1073, which was a county commissioner district gerrymandering. That bill had been suggested to be opposed by the committee. They received an objection. That bill's position is currently monitor. You'll notice that that does happen. So occasionally, as our board gives us feedback or responses, you'll see things change. If at any point in time you want to know more actively what is happening on the PPACG legislative side, we do have a web page specifically for it. It is ppacg.org/ledge, L-E-G. This page will pull up and give you our information on what our committee does, what our legislative priorities and themes are, and then also gives you a link to our state tracker. This tells you what of our bills are on the calendar already. Today, both I have to remember the names of the bills, the senior property tax exemption and the sales and use tax exemption for transportation were both on the agenda for today. We do have legislative committee members who are hopefully up there right now, but I can't tell you the answer on that, who had both volunteered to speak in favor of these bills because PPACG is supporting them. So if you're ever interested in knowing where a bill is right now today, here's the place you can go, ppacg.org/ledge. And it also, as we get new bills, as our lobbyist pulls things up, as members send things to us, as committee members might point things out, or as staff members find things, they'll get added on here, and they just won't have a position listed. When you see something without a position, I don't think I've got any right now, those are bills that are waiting for review. If there are notes, like I talked about amending who should receive the new revenue, those notes will be in here as well. We try very hard to make sure that this is an easy communication. Does anyone have any questions about the legislative update?
I just need to clarify a couple of things. It looks like the the transportation tax thing was actually referred to finance as well. That was in one of the notes that I can't remember where it was exactly. Was it in the first set of notes? And it looked like it went to both the Veterans Affairs and to Finance.
They are assigned to one committee at a time.
Okay. All right.
So
I pulled up the fiscal note, and I just had a couple of questions. I don't know how closely you've looked at the law, and I didn't. Is this going to restrict the ability of the legislature to offset the additional revenue that comes from this by reducing what would have been other general fund allocations, or is this going to get lumped in with whatever the overall budget, the long bill, does?
the bill does not specifically call out or force it to be done. The policy of our current governor and current legislature has been that bills that are passed that increase a amount being funded for transportation or education or anything are added to rather than balanced out during the long bill process.
Okay. Thank you.
Hi, Jessica. I wondered if you had looked at Senate Bill 147. Senator Gardner had just introduced about annexation. It's a brand new bill that basically removes city control and changes annexation rules from 1/6 contiguity to 1/3, and some other really severe changes. And I wondered if that's brought to your attention yet.
It has not been brought to our attention, so I will bring that up to the committee and see if it's an issue that they would like to consider. That, by the way, is a great thing. If you ever hear of a bill or see something, feel free to email me. You should all have my email. Or call me. I won't call back, but I'll get it.
Jessica, going back to the bill that Jim was referring to, the state sales tax revenue for transportation, right?
Yes.
What's the position again on that one?
Senate Bill 44 is one that we are supporting.
Okay, and I'm still a little unclear on, so it's 10% of the net revenue. How can that be added on? Doesn't that have to be taken away from somewhere else?
So it says that, I believe I understood Jim's question to be, is will the long bill give less funding to transportation because they're getting this money? Will they even it out? So the policy and the procedure that they have been doing is, yes, this money will align money from the sales and use tax into transportation, but the long bill, the budget bill, will not remove the amount they are planning to give to balance that out. Does that make sense?
Sure. Okay, so I guess I have a different question then. If they're not currently getting 10%, that's got to come from somewhere else. Does it explain at all who will lose out? Does that make sense? So 100% of sales and use tax is going somewhere at this point, and if they're asking for 10% of it, then where is that 10% coming from?
So Jessica, if I understand her question correctly, I think what you're asking is, where's the money coming from? So right now, currently, that sales and use tax is going into the general fund. The upshot of this bill will be that the money will not go to the general fund and will then be specifically used for transportation. So therefore, yes, the money will cause a net reduction in the general fund, and therefore things that are being funded, the state legislation that's using the general fund to fund other things will have less money to do so, because they will be forced to then have the money go to transportation. Does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you.
Does anyone have any other questions on our legislation? This is an information item. Because of how the Board of Directors is doing our legislative process, they are reviewing the bills, and then the Board of Directors is being given the opportunity to provide input. But we bring this to the CAC for two reasons. One, we want to make sure you know what positions PPACG is taking, what bills we're looking at, and more importantly, to ask you for feedback. If you have any questions or concerns that you have about the positions I've just discussed, or bills that we haven't looked at, now is the great time to pop those over so that I can bring those to our Board of Directors or add those to our Legislative Committee review. Does anyone have anything they want me to take back other than Senate Bill 147?
So if I understand correctly, and I'm not good at math either, your sales and use tax revenue for transportation is asking for money, and then you are also asking for money from those people who plug in their cars. Is that correct?
Yes, two separate ways.
Okay. Thank you.
I do want to offer an opportunity for citizen comment related to this agenda item. Any citizen comment? Okay. I'm sorry, I forgot to do that during the TIP amendment. Okay. All right.
I guess I have a question on the plug-in. What is a longevity fee? I don't understand what that is.
You are asking.
So there's a longevity fee that annually increases for each year, in addition to the $120 fee. Does anybody know what that is?
I don't.
I'm just curious.
It looks like it is a fee that increases for each year the vehicle is in service.
So why would that happen? I don't understand why it would get more expensive every year you own the vehicle.
I do not know the answer. I just know that that is what they put in.
And we support this? This one
This
right here?
is one that we are supporting because it does increase transportation funding, and that is a very high priority.
I'm not sure I would have supported as written.
And I'm seeing a couple more thoughts, but I do see public comment on it, so I'm going to have this nice gentleman come up and say.
My name is Gordon Rick. I'm from Fountain, Colorado. Regarding the electrical longevity fee, that seems to be opposite the way we do normal commercial cars. Normally, we charge a higher fee when they're newer, and it goes the opposite way, so it doesn't make any sense to me. Thank you.
Well, without the longevity fee, that I don't know about, other than I know there was detailed discussion about the batteries. So again, the longer the batteries are out there, the more likely they are to no longer function, and therefore you have to then dispose of them, and those batteries are not something you can just toss in the landfill. So that's just a guess there. Maybe that's not that. But I will say back to sort of the fee for plugging in a car. If you're paying, and again, it depends on what you drive versus a Hummer or something else, right? You're paying about $90 in gas tax over a year. And so right now, the electric vehicles pay an $80 fee, registration fee, 50 of which goes back to the roads. So I believe the intent of this bill is just to sort of level the playing field so that everyone, no matter what you're driving, is sort of paying the same amount back towards the vehicles. And I think that was one of the main reasons why the folks on the committee were looking to support this bill.
All right, while we're at it, I'll add one more question. Is there a distinction between a plug-in hybrid and a fully electric vehicle? Because a plug-in hybrid uses gas some of the time and electric some of the time, and a fully electric uses no gas.
Right.
Is there any distinction there?
I've not read that part of the bill as to the definitions.
Okay.
So regarding process, if members of the CAC want to sort of speak to an item, legislative committee meetings are open, or is it best to communicate through you?
All legislative committee meetings are open. Our next one is February the 10th. They are held upstairs at 8:30 in the morning on Mondays. So Monday, February the 10th at 8:30. There also is a call-in option. We do a conference line as well if people are interested. You can also always find the agendas and information on meetings available on the PPACG website for all of our committees. If it is easier for you, you can always reach things through me, or if you'd like to come and talk to the board of directors themselves at the meeting. These are always great paths.
They're not very threatening. Not very.
They're warm and fuzzy.
Yes.
Any other questions on legislative update?
Okay, great. John?
Should have been on the on-deck circle, time in the pitches. So for those of you who have been on the committee a while, you'll know that every year we have the Unified Work Program that is a requirement from the feds for the NPO function of PPACG. So last year you adopted the board adopted a 2-year work program that outlines the federal dollars that come into the program and what programs we do with those dollars, down to what plans as well as what services that we procure, et cetera. So every year we do an update of that. This is the update. So those of you who have been on the committee can say, hey, that looks awfully familiar. It is the exact same document with some changes to adjust estimates to actuals and update the financial information. For those of you who are new to the committee, it's all new, but that's basically sort of the upshot. It is a federal required document that we do, like I said, every 2 years. But again, it is required to be actually accurate, which is why we update it every year. The memo that Catherine put together kind of goes through the some of the contract services that PPACG is going through. We have the modeling support, putting our TIP online, and some of those other things, software purchases. Happy to answer any questions anybody might have through there. One of the questions that we had at the TAC for this item was what was the UCCS economic forum. Those models that we use are dependent on data, and they're only as good as the data that we put into them. The UCCS Economic Forum, Tatiana Bailey puts together like housing starts and all that other information. So by working with her on that, we receive all of that information then to feed the model. Again, the document was online, so hopefully you had an opportunity to take a look at it. And let me know if you have any questions. This is information item this time. It will come back to you next month as an action item. Taking the awkward silence, I think there's no questions.
Seeing no questions, any citizen comment on this item? All right, thank you. Okay, this is our opportunity for member discussion. If members have any updates or items they'd like to share with the group. Wow, quiet bunch today. Jim, yeah, you usually.
Guys, a clarifying question about the legislature. It's my understanding that this legislature cannot bind a future legislature.
Correct.
That each so all of this stuff that we see happening can be undone in a trice or a nonce, for all of that, whatever difference that makes, by the next legislature if somehow its composition is different.
So I'm not sure I'm going to phrase this in the perfect way, so please nobody get me in trouble for this. The legislature could go back and undo the bills of the previous year or 20 years ago. They would have to go into the individual code that it was put into and cancel that individual bill. Very rarely do they find that to be of value. But that is also part of why the legislature does try very hard to not create these super specific tiny funding streams. That is why it's an ongoing discussion about whether money should be earmarked and sent directly to specific topics or whether money should go into the general fund and be dispersed based on the perceived needs of that time period.
Thank you.
Any other questions, updates? Okay. So it looks like for our next meeting, we are anticipating a presentation from CDOT about crash and safety data.
Per your request back in December.
Is that scheduled?
That is scheduled for
Okay.
February.
Okay. And then, great, thank you. And for some yet to be determined date, mobility specialized transportation?
At our December meeting, we did have a request to hear a little bit more about what was going on with the mobility specialized transportation. Tamara had brought up the discussions going on between Mountain Metro, PPACG, the state, and a variety of other partners who are all looking at what the role of mobility coordination is in our region and who all should have a hand in that. So we were requested to have an update on that. Right now, any update we had would say we think maybe someday, So we're holding off on that. That's why it does say future meeting. When I actually have information to provide to you, you'll get to hear it.
Any other requests or recommendations for next meeting or future meetings?
It'll automatically be on there.
The vote.
I'm sorry, it'll be next month will be the adoption.
Yeah.
Yes. I misunderstood.
Presumed adoption.
So the items for next.
Let's not jump to conclusions here, John.
I'll just chime in. The items for next CAC meeting are whenever you guys have a question about something that you feel like you're not hearing enough about. Sometimes these have been used to request the crash and safety data or to hear an update about our Area Agency on Aging specific program. These are the places where you as our community members get to call out what you feel like you're not hearing about.
Okay, so keep that in mind for the future. All right. No, Jim. Lastly, you all received the PPACG meeting and event schedule in your packet.
Let me steal a button on that.
Yes.
I'm going to harass you all on that. You should all have gotten within that, not only do you get the meeting schedule, but the event schedule. Our Area Agency on Aging is doing a lot of great things that I guarantee someone in your life could afford to know about, whether that's Medicare 101, whether that's Social Security 101, or there is an entire retirement planning series that's going to be happening. There are flyers for these in our lobby, in our back desk. These are a great thing. Please share those in your community. And the really awesome thing, not only can you get them come in here, do a really cool class, most of them are also available online. We do webinars now. So those are marked pretty clearly, whether those are also available as webinars, except for on Medicare. And I'll just tell you the Medicare ones, if they're here at PPACG, if they're not listed as a library location, every single one of those is available as a webinar. You can sign up online, ppacg.org/events.
That's great. And for new members, you may be interested at some point in attending either a TAC or a board meeting to see kind of how what we do feeds into the other work. So you'll often hear, during our discussions, the TAC has recommended, and so TAC is Transportation Advisory Committee, not Technical Advisory Committee, but they're sort of our technical counterpart, and our combined recommendations are what go to the board. They're not always in agreement. They often are, but then the board takes that into consideration as they make final votes. Do you have anything else to add? Last call. Meeting adjourned.
For us to, in the future, when the board went around the checking board, to include your email address on that. Okay, make sure we get that to you. Then, I'm actually just going to give you these 2 pages of mine. I will. This is literally every meeting we have. The exceptions to that, but I will tell you are likely